Let's begin with a little meditation, even though this is a short period, just a brief motivation, and then we'll try to have a little meditation at the end also. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, try to calm your mind, bring your attention to your breathing. Don't control it. Shouldn't hear it any more than you did before you began watching it. You can remember that in other states of mind, when your mind is very calm, wise, and compassionate, any kind of thoughts or worries that are going through your mind, you've understood in other occasions to be insubstantial, unimportant, transitory. So recalling that, let go of them, and in placing your attention on the breathing, try to bring yourself to a state of quiet mind, non-conceptualizing mind. It may be advantageous to think whatever worldly worries I have about the present are based upon the sense of a seemingly self-existent self, doesn't exist at all. Problems seem very momentous and durable, permanent. We grasp to them that way, although we might intellectually understand they're impermanent. These are, ordinary worries like this are not objects of wisdom, fear, one of the causes of refuge. But we should think, by concerning ourselves with these thoughts, we're preventing ourselves from practicing Dharma in everyday life, forgetting the Dharma, concentrating on these insubstantial worries that revolve around the 8 worldly concerns, the 8 worldly dharmas. After this life, whatever worries we might have of the present will seem totally insignificant if we were to be born in one of the 3 lower realms. The sufferings of the hell realms, physical fear, the trembling, the terror, excruciating pain, unceasing. Our present problems are insignificant compared to that. They pale in comparison to that. To be born as a spirit, never finding what we want for tens of thousands of years, as an animal, fearful, devoured by others, for most cases. Even if someone were to kindly mention the 4 seals that certify a Buddhist doctrine in our ear, the four wrong views, or the 4 immeasurables, we might, if we have a tail, we might wag it. Otherwise, we might only be afraid that someone is about to smash us, our minds encased in darkness of ignorance. Now we have a perfect human rebirth. Every moment, every instant can be used to practice the Dharma. Even the time it takes to do a small chore, brewing a cup of coffee, or, as is said in the Lam Rim, milking the cow. Even a part of that, a fraction of that time, we can meditate on the Dharma, think about the Dharma, leave imprints in our mind. Make use of this perfect human rebirth to start to eliminate the causes of rebirth in the lower realms, prevent creating new causes, purifying the old causes through various meditations, the 4 opponent forces and so forth, and creating the causes to be born in the upper realms. As Rinpoche said the other day, when all the causes and conditions are present, say to be born in the upper realms, even if we were to wish not to be born there, we would have no choice. Why provisionally to think first to be born in the upper realms? Well, to have a succession of human lives, to continue to practice the Dharma, to actually develop unaffected, spontaneous compassion. Real bodhicitta, spontaneous bodhicitta, as a result of that. To develop our wisdom more and more through understanding impermanence, eventually selflessness of persons and phenomena. With a real sense of renunciation, understanding all of the pleasures, all of the fantasies of cyclic existence, all of the perfections, worldly perfections, are of unsatisfactory nature. Dukkha, as the Buddha called them, suffering. With renunciation, bodhicitta, the right view of emptiness, even this lifetime leaving an imprint of the practice of Tantra, in future lifetimes to meet that again, that very, very rare teaching, perhaps in the Pure Lands. This is what we can do with our life. To be able to do that, the first step is taking refuge. Out of that concern that we don't ourselves have the means to avoid the lower realms. Taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, principally at this point Dharma, which means these meditations that were taught by the perfect Buddha, entrusting ourselves to them, and utilizing the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as objects of our homage, our offerings. As Rinpoche said again and again, so important to accumulate merit in the field of merit of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the tree of assembled gurus, is the supreme source of that. So with the thought of following this path laid out in stages, the stages of the path, as far as it leads to total enlightenment for the welfare of all living beings, I'm going to participate in the discussion this afternoon so that I can overcome my ego and really work spontaneously to alleviate the suffering of others, to be a real friend, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister to all living beings. then bring your attention back. Present. How's everyone? No?
Very good.
Oh, very good. Okay. Okay. That looked like we weren't too happy. Okay. So we've been following Choden Rinpoche's very detailed explanation of the stages of the path. And I wonder if anyone has any questions. Yes.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
First one, it's kind of been bothering me for a couple of years. The story of the 4 monks who took the puja offering that was purchased with tainted money.
Mm-hmm.
I never quite understood how it is that the monks would have a karmic repercussion for that if they were not aware of the fact that the puja was made with ill-gotten finances. Doesn't there have to be intent in order for karma to ripen?
What do you think, Georgie? Karma only is created when you have intention?
It just seems really, I mean, 3...
Unfair, right?
Well, you have these 3 monks. You think 3 monks, they've got to be creating virtue their whole lives, and they do this one thing,
anyway.
and it sends them straight to hell. It's like, gosh, if that's the case, there's no hope for me, because I'm not doing anything compared to what they're doing, and
Okay, I won't comment on it.
Okay.
No, there is hope. There is hope for you.
It just sounds kind of like, wow, if these 3 beings who are practicing morality their whole lives do one thing that they didn't even know about, and they're going to go to hell because of it, it sounds pretty...
Well, that's one of the reasons to be very
Fatalist,
careful
yeah.
about. Well, like as Rinpoche mentioned, there was in Tibet there was sort of a tradition never to eat in the publishing house, never to have a cup of tea in the publishing house, because the funds that were buying your tea might have been made from funds that were gotten from the selling of texts and so forth. So in general, there's karma that's created even when we don't have intention. There's a lot of examples. We can go through a whole bunch of examples that you're probably familiar with and you'll start to recall. For instance, as you're walking along and you step on an ant or an uncle. No, I'm just joking. Excuse me. And you kill it. There's no intention. You might not even know that you've done it, right? But later, there can be, in some circumstances, some karmic consequence of that. There's an example of Nagarjuna in his life that is renowned, that we know that he wrote all of these great texts, both Sutra and Tantra. He had a karmic relationship with a king. You know this, the story that I'm going to say. He had a karmic relationship with a king that he had been writing some letters to, and the king's son was getting a little bit anxious, wanting to become king, asking when father was going to retire, and when is father going to die, and very kind of afflicted mind. And his mother told him, the queen told the son, that his father, the king, had this karmic relationship with Nagarjuna, and that until Nagarjuna died, the king would not die. So he went to Nagarjuna and asked Nagarjuna, sort of requested him, could you please die? I want to become king, and my father has this relationship with you, and so forth. So Nagarjuna, for other reasons, saw that it was time, that his benefit, I guess, on earth was waning. And so he also saw that he had a particular karma on his mind stream from in a lifetime, many lifetimes before, as a grass cutter with a scythe, what do you call it, scythe or sickle? Scythe, cutting the grass. He had sliced the head Or as he was doing it, a blade of grass that he was cutting sliced the head off an ant. And because of that, he had the karma to die being beheaded from a blade of grass. That would be the only way that he could die. So he severed his head and took the aspect of passing away. And of course, there's legends about the body and the head were separated, and they're moving together slowly. And when they, I think Rinpoche has mentioned this, or Kuji Senship Rinpoche mentioned in earlier teachings, when they said when they meet again, Nagarjuna will appear in the world again. But so that's kind of example. Also, we create virtuous karma without knowing it. You know the story of the fly. We're talking about insects, ants, and flies today, who in desiring to sit on some excrement, floated around the stupa, and therefore created the karma in a future life at the time of the Buddha to become, when he was a human being, that was sufficient karma, even though the other arhats who looked at his mind stream, they couldn't see any kind of root of virtue to become a monk. The Buddha said this karma was sufficient for him to become a monk. The ant had no intention, from the side of the object. So sometimes also, even you see a picture of the Buddha, and even if you raise anger, you create combined karma. We call it modeled karma or mixed karma, striped karma. There'll be some karma you create by getting angry, but the karma you create by seeing the image of the Buddha will bring benefit to you. Or even if you don't get angry, you just see, you create some karmic instinct from the side of the object. So with those kinds of examples, maybe you can start to see there is some karmic cause, some effects, some results that arise even when you don't have intention. So it's also in some of the teachings it's said that you shouldn't have meals, you shouldn't take food and drink and so forth in the house of someone who has disrespect for your teachers, someone who's perhaps broken their karmic bond, their vows or their samayas with respect to them, because that also creates some karmic obscuration. The Lama Tsong Khapa mentioned in some of his texts that these kinds of subtle karmic obscurations are very, very difficult to know. And we have to go by the teachings of Buddha to understand the major ones, such as this, that funds that are used from, funds that arise from the sale of dharma shouldn't be used in general for food and drink and livelihood. It's very good to keep those, if you do, say for instance, if you sell some books or something like that, it's good to keep that money separate and use it for more books or for making offering or something like that.
Then if I go to Borders and I buy a Dharma book at Borders,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that, other than, say the book comes from like wisdom or it's proper publication.
I'm
But
glad you use the FPMT
okay.
publisher. I mean, okay.
But Borders is making their 40% profit or whatever Borders take. So then am I inadvertently?
Well, you're not. If you don't have a cup of tea in Borders, I mean, a free cup of tea.
Sometimes I do. Oh no, I pay for it.
Yeah. I think. Excuse me. In I don't know how many years, 20 years ago or so, Lama Yeshe asked me to go to Solo Khumbu along with another Kopan monk to check the pages of a set of texts that Lama Zopa Rinpoche had bought. Did I tell you this story before? The Tengyur, the collection of the Buddhist commentaries, and this gentleman, a Tibetan gentleman, I think he was Tibetan, whose family lived in Solo Khumbu, Nepal. They had been a recipient of this that their father had printed, or their grandfather, and it had been in the family for a long time and was revered every year. Even the local monks would come and make puja, but he decided enough was enough. He was going to sell it and become rich. This was a treasure that was waiting to be used. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, knowing about Nepal, hearing the news, decided that he would try to because he knew that someone would buy it, and if Lama Zopa bought it rather than someone else, that he would create some karmic connection. This gentleman would create the karmic connection with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and that in future lives, even in this lifetime, he would be able to, by that karma, even if this person did suffer as a result of this, he would be able to help him in various ways, make that karmic connection. So you might think that when you purchase things, if it's better not to purchase, or to, as is said in the teachings, invite. Like say you invite a picture or an image of the Buddha to your house. Like if you were to go to a real Dharma craftsperson and ask, how much would the ransom be to invite this image of Buddha to my house? That's almost like that. So in that way, if you purchase things like that from Dharma practitioners, there is less likelihood of negative consequences. But if you were to just purchase it from people who have just worldly motivation, maybe they're not completely. There may be some karmic obscurations associated with those images, not completely pure. So it's better to have things that were created themselves out of a virtuous state of mind. Anyway, let's leave that one. Let's see if anyone else has a question. Mr. Kresh.
Okay, so I just want to carry this just a little bit further,
Okay.
if we can.
As long as you don't
Not so
drive
much
it.
about the...
Just carry it.
Yeah. So, again, intention is part of it. I mean, like what you were saying is, if you were to buy the book from Wisdom, I mean, their intention is,
Wait. Don't talk about their intention. Your karma depends on your intention.
I'm
I'm talking about karmic obscuration. They're two different things.
Okay.
If you talk about paths of action, things that can throw you definitely into the lower realms, seeds that will, if unpurified, will definitely throw you into the lower realms, the 10 paths of non-virtue, that requires having an intention to do the action. If you didn't have the intention, there's no certainty that that karma will ripen, such as, say, stepping on an ant, but it's still an obscuration, and it can ripen in some circumstances. So from your side, the karma you create depends, throwing karma to be born in the lower realms in general depends upon your intention. But there's some circumstances where the throwing karma, such as this very heavy kind of karma utilizing funds of the Dharma, that can actually throw you into the lower realms just by the force of the object. So that's there's some exceptions like that. That's why I said Lama Tsong Khapa, others said that this kind of investigation of karma and its consequences is very, very subtle, and especially karmic obscurations like this, very difficult to understand. So we have to base what we do know. It's not something you can logically figure out. I should do this, I shouldn't do this. So you have to depend upon the scriptures, the teachings of the Buddha.
Okay, so let me go to my side of it then. So I'm buying a book, and I'm just buying a book for pure motivation, just to learn the Dharma. I go to somebody like Wisdom and I buy the book.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
That's one. Nothing wrong with that. But now I found a guy who has stolen a book or something like that. Again, kind of what you were talking about, something very special. And this is he's strictly doing it for profit, and I'm doing it because I could justify it by saying, well, I want the book for Dharma, but really it's really a score getting this book. So basically,
better not to score.
Not to score. That's what I thought.
Better not to score.
Okay.
In that case.
Yeah.
Especially something as ill-begotten. Yeah.
Venerable George, I think there's so many things that, someone like myself, does unintentionally and maybe intentionally, but then where does purification come in once we realize that we've done something?
Well, these things, like this thing about the Dharma is quite heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that we may not, some of these are not things that we would ordinarily do. But in general, any karmic seed can be purified, but some of them take much more effort than others. Things like karma with respect to the Dharma, abandoning the Dharma, using using the funds of the Dharma, maybe can be purified through Tantra, because most of these teachings come from the sutra side. Maybe they can be purified more effectively through Tantra, but some of them are still very difficult. The situation when Marpa, who had studied with his guru Naropa, and Naropa manifested the mandala of Guhya Samaja at one point. There's Guhya Samaja, or I'm not sure, it was Hevadra, wrathful-looking deity there, and Marpa looks at Hevadra, looks at his guru, and Naropa says, "Who you're going to prostrate to?" So then Marpa was thinking, well, I see my guru every day, but Hevadra, this is a score. So he prostrated to Hevadra, and the guru snapped his finger, and Hevadra disappeared because it was an emanation of the guru's mind. And Naropa said, before the guru, there's not even the name Buddha. So you made a mistake. And as a result of that, it's said that Marpa's enlightenment was delayed for some time. So how you understand that, either manifested that it was delayed, either he already achieved enlightenment and pretended it was delayed, or to show other people, or whatever. But it was the karmic obscuration of that. So what we're talking about, though, on the other hand, when you're talking about numberless lifetimes that we've been in samsara, even if we've created some karma that's going to keep us in another life, okay, from the point of view of someone like the Dalai Lama or Lama Tsong Khapa Rinpoche, some great being who could help so much, you have to think we've got incredible karmic imprints in our mind from negative actions we've done in this and other lifetimes. So take things in perspective. Sometimes people get, what's the right word, neurotic about, I stepped on an ant, or I put the wrong color flower on the altar. I mean, we do so many things every day, so many negative actions consciously, that the little teeny things that we have read in the text that are also negative, we get excited about. You can purify these things, and it's better to think of the heavier ones rather than just to get really upset about some small negative karma. I'm going to divide around, see if anyone else has a question before Crash gets number 2. In case. No, before Crash gets number 2, I was going to check if anyone. Midian, you have a question? Okay, Crash.
Okay, so different topic. Could you elaborate a little bit about Rinpoche was talking about the four measurables and how, let me read this. Basically, they condense all the teachings, all the Buddhist teachings.
Not the four immeasurables.
4 seals.
Okay.
There's four ideas that condense all of the Buddhist teachings.
The fourfold condensation.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
So that's not the four immeasurables, it's another thing, okay? Fourfold condensation, so you can think that all of Buddhist teachings essentially fall into these four ideas, that all compounded phenomena, all things that come about because of causes and conditions, are necessarily impermanent. They're necessarily changing moment by moment. There's nothing that endures even to the next instant without some change, let alone, not disintegrating completely. all contaminated phenomena, phenomena that have arisen because of contaminated karma and delusion, perceived by contaminated mind, all contaminated phenomena are dukkha, or suffering. Right, this word, sometimes people, they don't like the word suffering. They think it sounds too bad. So you say unsatisfactory, but it's, you get down to it, it's suffering. All contaminated, even the pleasures that we might dream of, fantastic food, or what's fantastic around here? Sunset on the beach, or gelato ice cream downtown, a bike trip through a forested road in Oregon. I don't know, whatever you might think of as pleasure, or Beethoven's music, or beautiful art. All of these things, or sexual pleasure, or the sense of the sense of joy when someone loves you, or you feel in love with someone, or like this. All of these kinds of, when I talk about ordinary love, all of these kinds of things, although they might seem like pleasure, they're actually the nature of suffering, because if they were pleasure, those objects were the cause of pleasure, the more you had them, the greater the pleasure would be. And what you call pleasure, even the experience, not just the cause of it, the experience itself, if it were real pleasure, the more you came in contact with the object, the pleasure should endure, but it actually changes over time. We know that. It doesn't, you no longer can experience that same thing. And Aryadeva said that's a sign. Just as, like, if you take a small amount of poison, if you take a little bit in medicine, it can actually relieve some symptoms. But if you keep on taking it, thinking that it's good, it can actually kill you, can have ill effects. Then, third point of condensation. These are also sometimes called the 4 seals that certify a Buddhist teaching. The third one is all phenomena are selfless and empty. All phenomena, although they appear to be having some kind of substantial self-existence, ourself, other phenomena, they only appear to our mind due to our karma, due to dependent arising. There is no inherent appearance or existence from the side of the object. There's nothing there that's really what we think it is, our problems, other people. And finally, the state of liberation, nirvana, is the only real bliss that is actual joy. Those are called the 4 seals, or in this case, 4 points of condensation of the teaching. Okay. So, just to go to the text itself for a minute, where we're talking about, we're getting near the end of this, the end of this section on refuge, right? And, okay. So when we talk about how, when we say taking refuge, how do you take refuge? How do you take refuge? Do you know? I forget, what's your name? Sherry. Sherry. How do you take refuge? Take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. How do you do it? I mean, you say, the text has said all of these benefits of taking refuge. And if you've taken refuge, you should do this and that. How do you take refuge?
Faith and spirituality, and faith is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because in the field of the low rent, so you have faith that yours will lead you to free from the low rent.
So that's one of the causes, and it might seem that's the main thing, but it does, in the teachings it says also is necessary to have some apprehension or fear that motivates you to seek refuge. So for instance, if you have faith in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or you have faith in some cancer medicine, but you don't have any fear that you have cancer, you just leave the cancer medicine on the table, right? You say you have faith in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, And if you have no fear of being reborn in the lower realms, or the fears of the sufferings of samsara, or fear of not attaining enlightenment and not being able to help sentient beings, you may not actually go for refuge. So faith and fear are equally important. So we have to, otherwise we, Oriental, Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans have great faith, but we have to have that understanding, that wisdom fear, not just like sort of like debilitating fear, but a wisdom fear, like a person who understands the danger of fire would never consciously stick their hand into it. They would warn others not to put their hand into the fire, but still knowing that, they're not paralyzed by that fear, right? They know what to do. They know how to take refuge from that. So that's developing the causes of refuge is one way to take refuge. But in the text itself, there were various outlines. Taking refuge by means of. What are some of the special ways of taking refuge? Do you remember? Knowing the qualities. So as you understand the qualities, your faith increases, so that can increase your refuge, among other things. Is there something about making offerings to them, knowing the distinctions? Do you remember? Because if you understand these outlines, you understand better. Like if you just say, today, I'm going to go for refuge. I'm going to say one rosary, one mala of, I go for refuge to Buddha, I go for refuge to Dharma, I go for refuge to Sangha. Go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, go for refuge. So just saying that without a deep sense of the meaning, we need the causes of that, taking refuge. But how does that help, saying the words? Well, in a sense, that is verbalizing and actually thinking, renouncing other refuges. Remember, one of the ways of taking refuge was to renounce forsaking any other refuges. It doesn't mean you don't depend on food or warmth to protect you from temporal things, or even other beings to protect you from certain things, but ultimately only the Dharma. So with these states of mind, these are the things to review. We'll talk on Monday a little more detail when we have more time about how to think about those things, how to take refuge by knowing those various divisions. So let's end with a couple minutes of meditation again and some dedication. Again, as I said before, sometimes different ways to initiate just calming the mind. Remind yourself you don't have to engage in the discursive thoughts that have been going through your head. Remembering that in some circumstances, when you've developed virtuous state of mind, compassion or a sense of impermanence or emptiness, wisdom, that your problems seem very insubstantial, illusion-like, and you can let them go. Try to recall that right from the beginning and place your attention on just the breathing, first of all. And think during this course, every session, as we try to develop some good motivation at the beginning, we have created virtuous roots of merit. Even walking to the car, driving here, every step on the way, we create virtue with the intention of listening to the advice, the teachings of the Buddha transmitted through the holy beings such as the Holy Guru, Choden Rinpoche and Lama Tsong Rinpoche. Listening to those teachings with an open mind, trying to understand the words with a mind that's open to investigating them, contemplating them, trying to keep them in mind even for a few instants, and as we understand more and more, try to keep them in mind, meditate on them, even as we understand the meaning and have some small understandings, some feelings during the teachings to meditate on them. We've created virtuous karma, roots of virtue in our mental continuum. These can only ripen unless they're destroyed by anger or wrong view, abandoning the Dharma and so forth. These can only ripen as relief, as samsaric happiness within cyclic existence. They're not uncontaminated karma, but they can be, by dedicating them, they can become the causes of our spiritual growth while we're in samsara, and even we can dedicate them to the final enlightenment so that they're not totally exhausted even until that point. So think, may the merit that I've worked so hard to create, the good feelings I've created, the imprints I've left in my mind, may they not be wasted in future lifetimes with the mere experience of pleasure that I experience with attachment or pride, whatever beauty or attractiveness I have may have not become the cause of my narcissistic sense of self, pride. Whatever power or charisma I have may it not become a cause of more delusions, my wealth and so forth. But in whatever way I have resources and benefits, pleasures in the future, may I always use them to enhance my Dharma practice, whatever resources I have to offer them, for instance, as one of the great Kadampa Geshis was able to offer incense, even 22 pieces, 22 coins of gold worth of incense. Not wasted. We might think, what a waste, the incense was gone. May I use whatever merit that I've created for the continuation of my Dharma teachings, to accumulate more wisdom, to benefit sentient beings as I'm going along, for the sole purpose of attaining enlightenment, so that by myself alone I can spontaneously, effortlessly alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings, set them into that same eventual state of enlightenment due to these merits. And seal the dedication with a meditation on the emptiness of the three spheres. In this case, the merits, the goals dedicated to, and the act of dedication that joins them, all appear as truly existent to our mind, but in reality are empty of true existence, mere imputations to appearances that have no real substantial true existence or inherent existence. Yet these particular karmic appearances, dependent arisings, do have karmic efficacy.